Hi, this is Manish Dixit. I run product and engineering at Linux Foundation. I'm based out of San Jose and Hyderabad. I've been in industry for last 30 years. Been worked in few startups, worked at Sun Microsystem, Oracle, and since last couple of years, I've been with Linux Foundation. Uh, what I'm going to present today is like, you all interact with open source projects. Uh, we'll, I'll give you a little bit brief understanding of how Linux Foundation looks at different open source project and makes decision which one to support, which one to move forward, etc. So for that, we have a tool called LFX Insights, which basically gives you the understanding of how the project is doing, etc. So first and foremost, I'll give you a background. Why did we build this tool, right? Now, a few headlines. Like once something is an open source, it's very very important to pay attention what's going on, right? Like one example is OpenSSL had a security issue, right? And if we know the code base, you understand what's going on, it's easier to support that project. Um, how a developer broke node etc simply by inserting 11 line of JavaScript, right? And I think you all know this, one of the biggest cyber security issue was we were able to avoid because we had insights about the project. And this was in Linux kernel, right? So if someone was able to get into the level of from a contributor to maintainer and was able to get certain code base, which if would have gone into production, it would have become a big security hole, right? So for that, we need to be able to understand how the project is doing, right? So what we realize, we don't have a very common way to evaluate a project, and I'll define as we go what do we mean by that, right? The challenges, like some of you might be leveraging open source project uh, to get your work done, and some of you might be contributor, and some of you might also be maintainer, right? So when you have your project out there, a lot of time maintainers, the one who maintains the code, don't get the desired support, and that leads to project not being healthy. Like, so knowing what all the challenges a maintainer is going through is an important point, right? Same time, if there is a risk in the project, we need to know from a security perspective, right? So keeping all this in mind, we start working on a product called LFX Insights. So basically insights about the project, what's going on, right? So what we did is we standardized the metrics, right? What this is, and again, I'm going to talk about the goal there is help maintainer, developers like you, and stakeholder to make informed decisions, right? How healthy the project is, what is their security, status, what challenges maintainers are going through, right? And we also aggregate data from 20 different data sources. Like if you look at from a code perspective, most of the code is coming from GitHub, right? But then we also look at the Slack, at Twitter, LinkedIn, other different sources to make sure we create right affiliation around the project. And now we just don't support the LFX project, which is the Linux Foundation project. And when I say Linux Foundation project, Linux has close to 200 foundation, right? Kubernetes is one of the project which you will hear tomorrow in KubeCon, etc. But PyTorch, there are so many projects which we help, and what we do here is make sure those projects are healthy. And the second piece of it, now we start supporting projects which are not even LF project. Again, we believe making sure giving the insights around those projects, it does two things. it helps developers like you to understand what's going on around the project. The same, it also gives us an opportunity to understand which project should become part of LF ecosystem, which project, next project we should support, right? So even though it sounds very simple, but being open source, it has a lot of issues, right? One of the biggest challenges, understand which project is critical. There are so many projects out there, right? And we would like to support critical projects. That's the first part. Second is, once you start supporting the project, how healthy the project is, right? We need to be able to make sure that's very transparent, that information is transparent. And then creating high quality data around that project. As you all understand, like in open source, a lot of time developers don't really tell us which organization they work for, right? And they contribute code, and then we might affiliate them with a certain organization, then later find out, oh, they work for something else. And again, I'll give an example. So these are like, while we want to have a very clear understanding of how healthy a project is, it's not easy task because being open source, right? Like people, a lot of people don't even create their real identity when they contribute in open source project, right? On GitHub, etc., right? And we want to make sure we affiliate right people, right? So now, when we talk about, how do we understand project criticality? Like we look into multiple things, and I'll talk about. So there is a project called OpenSSF. How many of you know OpenSSF? Right? So it's a security foundation, right? So it gives a critical score based on how old, what's the age of the project is, how many people are contributing to it, how often the contribution is happening, how often releases are happening, and what other dependency this project has. Like you can pretty clearly understand that will take that project to be one of the critical project, right? Because if project has been around for a while, Kubernetes is a great example, has been around. A lot of people are still contributing, which means people are using it, they need it. And they often contribute, and the releases are happening, and there is a dependency on it. So that project automatically become critical. And we took that logic and created a project health score, and I'll talk about what it is. But before I get into it, right, so if you go to insights.linuxfoundation.org, you can see close to 10,000 most critical projects. They are categorized by stack, like technology stack. In this case, it could be programming, it could be observability, different, or the industry as well, right? So you can go. The other thing what we do is we also able to put dollar value to what's the value of that project. And when we look at the value, there is a value as an interesting aspect, right? Think about, a lot of people think open source is free. It is not free. Someone contributing their time to it. And so that's a supply side, right? So let's say if you use a project to build your own product, right? In that case, what you are doing, you are leveraging that project and building your product. So if that project didn't exist, what would you do? You have to hire engineers to build that code base. So that's a supply side cost. So that could have been maybe 5 engineers, 10 engineers, whatever it could be. And once you build that product, now let's say, example, I'll take Kubernetes. Now, if you are going into Kubernetes market, that's their demand side, right? You can go and target so much market. So that's a demand. So what we do is we are able to even put a dollar value on each project. What's the worth of it, right? And then the criticality score as well, right? So you can, like if you go to insights.linuxfoundation.org, you can see open source index. Then you can also see, as I talked about from a dollar perspective, you just go and they look at which is the most, valuable open source project, right? And then from a commit perspective, how often the commit's happening, etc., right? Also, what we can do is very easily, understand what is the dependency of that project on other project. That also makes it a project critical, right? Now, when I go to the next, like, so if I'm just going through different, stack here, like here's the web development framework. Most of you may be application developer. These are the projects which are, which are getting used in that regard, right? So if you go to this, right, you will see all the other open source project too. So we are beyond LF now. I'm talking about projects which are not part of Linux, like Next.js. You can easily understand what's the health of that project. Why it is important? See, let's say if you are developing an application and you start relying on a third-party open source project. If you come to insights .linuxfoundation.org, you can, before you go and say, okay, I'm committing to this, you can see how healthy that project is. Because if that project is not healthy, you might be relying on something which is not well maintained, which is not well supported, and then your product, has its own challenges because of that, right? So now I'm going to help you understand, what's the project health. Project health is who is contributing this project on behalf of which company. Knowing where the contributors are coming from, it's an important part, because that tells us how healthy the project is from a contribution perspective, how popular the project is, who else is leveraging that project, right? Because if no one is and you start doing it, after a year that project may not even be there, right? So again, knowing that is very, very important. Then, is this project actively maintained? Again, important, right? So let's say if you rely on it, suddenly a bug shows up, and you as a contributor are willing to give the code back, but if there is no maintainer to maintain it and merge your code, then now you're relying on a project which no one is using it. Again, that puts you in a very bad place, right? Same thing, is this project I am relying on secure, or it's following best practices or not? So we looked at all these four aspects of it, and then for each project, you can see, as you can see, I'm talking about here contributors. So you can clearly see, okay, what's happening from the contribution perspective. The next is popularity. Who else is using that project? So right now, I've taken an example of Kubernetes, but you can go and look at any project, right? And that'll help you understand that. Development too, right? What's happening on the development side, right? Is people contributing? Is it, and then security. This is one of the most important thing, because a lot of time we end up relying on open source project, and one of the biggest question comes in, is it secure or not? And we have an ability to go, because of our OpenSSF project, we can go and understand how secure that project is. At the same time, the project also has a badge, right? We create this badge, and let's say if you have your own project, you can come and let us know. We will put it there, and you can get a badge, and you can put it on your GitHub. So when someone comes to that GitHub, they can say, oh, LF Insight has all the information about it, right? And then you can see all these aspects about it, right? So I talked about, contributor leaderboard, right? You can easily see who the most contributors are, and you can see who the maintainer is, etc. This is Kubernetes. Now, which organization is contributing most? You all know Google donated Kubernetes to LF, right? So you could clearly see Google is still contributing and supporting that project, right? And that's very important for you. So let's say if you rely on Kubernetes, a company like Google is supporting it and behind it. So that's something which we tell you, because today if you just go to GitHub, you will not have that information. And that's what we are trying to present to you, right? Then which contributor this project depends on? That's also very, very important. Think about this way. Let's say if you work for another big company, and if you see another big company this project depends on, you can go back to your company and say, hey, we need to contribute and reduce the dependency on it because our dependency is basically on one of our competitor. So knowing all that is very, very important. While it's an open source, interesting part of open source is the code is always open. The information about who's contributing is not available easily. And that's what we are trying to get to, right? And so the one important part I like while when you guys go and check it out, see, biggest challenge with open source data is it's not as reliable, right? So we what we do is we make it very easy for you. Let's say if you have a project, many times what will happen is a maintainer will come and find out we are not showing them the top maintainer because we just don't have all the affiliation. I'll talk about how it. So they can easily go and report it to us, and we go and check and make sure it's corrected. Now, if you have your open source project, we also give you a badge which you can put it on your LinkedIn. So if you're contributing and you're doing it like on GitHub, etc., and that helps a lot to popularize the project. Now, I want you to understand how difficult it is think about, we go after 20 data sources, not just GitHub, more than GitHub. We have close to 7 billion data points through those data sources. We look at close to 3 million contributor profile and more than 700,000 organization companies. And we take all this data and put into, like if you guys are from a data side of thing, on your own community data platform, and which creates this insight product. Now, I'll take you through a journey why it is an interesting challenge. Think about a software developer, his name is Max, right? He has been contributing to Kubernetes and Linux, and you can see, when we go to GitHub, simply go to GitHub, and I took an example here, because he has not updated his profile continuously, it shows he works for a company called ECME Research Lab, right? And if we just rely on that, this is what we'll show. But we rely on more data sources than GitHub. What we found out, he switched a job in 2022, which means ECME is his newer job. Because it was the latest job, GitHub was showing that all his previous contribution, also the previous organization. In reality, it was to Quantum Intel. This is based on taking additional data source like a LinkedIn, right? The next, but then he comes to our, so what we have in Linux on LFX, we also have something called individual dashboard, where you as a developer can go and change your affiliation. So Max came and logged into Linux Foundation, and he fixed his affiliation and said, hey, that the code kernel contribution, I didn't really made it for a company. I did it personally. That was my personal contribution, right? Which is different than a company contribution, right? Through organization. And then like we look at it and then we create this affiliation. Then we said, hey, but in 2024, again, another data source, ECME was acquired by Novatech, right? So now the ECME no longer exists. Because it's asset transfer, all their contribution now needs to go to Novatech. Now think about it, where we started. If we would have relied purely on GitHub, what would have said? Hey, Max, all your contribution belongs to ECME, which is not the reality, right? See where we came, right? So now, and he's not going to spend all his time to fix this. No developer does that. He or she is more involved in making sure they are contributing to the project. And that's what we try to help out with, right? Now, I'll give an example, right? When you take raw data, just take GitHub, the accuracy of correctness is no more than 20 to 30%, right? We run through some of our AI bots and fix those, and which goes to multiple data sources, we get it to 90% correctness. Again, I'm saying 90%. We're getting 100% in open source it's impossible. Then we also have an affiliation team which goes to different sources manually and fixes it. This makes sure our data quality is more than 90+%. So when you come to LFX Insight and you look at the project, we believe the data and the insight we are presenting is highest quality because it is going through all this journey. Now, I'll give an example of, so how many of you know OSSinsight.io? Not many, but OSS Insight basically is another platform but they purely rely on GitHub. So you can see PyTorch is one of the project, right? And PyTorch, by the way, was a Facebook project, right, which they donated to Linux Foundation to grow, right? So if you go to open source OSSinsight.io, they will say Facebook, Meta, Facebook research. In reality, this is the accurate data, right? Because close to 52% of code contribution on PyTorch is coming from Facebook or Meta. In this case, Meta is the real name for Facebook. Now, if you are going to build your AI model leveraging PyTorch, you can trust on it because Meta is behind it. That's the information we want to present to you when you are making any decisions on open source. Now, we still have a lot of challenges to, right? How do we, identify critical score for critical projects so that we can rely on? That's what we are trying to. We are working on how do we automate onboarding of projects. So let's say tomorrow you have your own project, how quickly we can automate, because if we provide a good insight and if your project is providing value, it'll be much easier for people to adapt and go for it, right? And the biggest challenge in open source world is the data quality. How do we continuously keep improving data quality? Now, if you look at what we have done, we have made the Insight our own product as an open source project. So you can go and check it out. In fact, you can contribute to it. If you need any enhancement or feature, you can ask for it. We continuously keep, we're trying to be the home of open source, so we made sure our code is also open source. So it's out there for you guys to look at it and provide us any feedback you have. Right. The other thing, so we launched this in May 2025, right? And we have seen active users going up quite a bit. And we have close to 100 critical non-LF projects also onboarded. Not just the Linux Foundation projects like PyTorch, Kubernetes, we also have Node.js, other projects too. Because what we want LFX to be an open source ecosystem which is regardless of LF, non-LF, to support you so that you make right choices. And when we see you leveraging a non-LF project, what happens? We try to bring that project into LF umbrella so it can grow. So that's how we leverage this, right? We got a lot of positive feedback, and I don't want to read all of it, but you can see a lot of people are already leveraging because your job depends on many times on a project, right? And knowing you can trust that project is very, very important. Also, if you're building a project and if it's on LF, and if it's doing, if the insight looks good, where the project health is good, the security metrics are good, more people are going to adopt your project, right? So it's better to be here than anywhere else, right? Now, what's next with LF Insight, right? We are going to onboard close to 10,000 critical project, LF, non-LF. We are going to make sure the insights are a lot more actionable, because what we're going to do is, let's say if you are a maintainer, you will be able to see, hey, where my challenge is, do I need help? You can ask for it, right? And also connect with our other product. I don't know how many of you have created your own profile on LFX. Good. So if you have LFID, you can go to individual dashboard and you can create your profile and say, hey, these are the project I'm contributing to it. What it does, it does a better job in providing better insight. Again, because see, I'm repeating myself, but getting open source data 100% accurate, impossible. We can only get 90 to 95%, which is what we try for, right? And now, how can you get involved, right? Go try it on insights.linuxfoundation.org. Uh, it's free as anything what we offer. You can also come to our GitHub repository and participate in the discussion, ask for features and functionality if you want to have, right? If you are a maintainer of a project, you can, easily let us know, and we will try to make sure it is part of, and if you already have a project, you can take a badge and put it on your LinkedIn or GitHub, etc. Right? Thanks for listening. We have another few minutes. I'm more than happy to take any questions you guys may have. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we just need your GitHub. Like if you give us GitHub URL, there is like if you go and scan what I said, you can go and post it there, and we will, onboard it. So the onboard, what happens is we go and crawl the whole GitHub repository, put that all in CDP data, and then start going around other 20 sources to make sure we are getting all the data, and then create insights around it. Yeah, so very, very good question. So with LF project, what happens, we have a lot more data about it, right? Because that's a project which we are managing and maintaining, right? A non-LF project, we mostly rely on GitHub and then few other information. And it does two things, right? If you are a non-LF project, you are a maintainer, and when you look at an LF project, the amount of information you provide, what are you going to do? You're going to come to us and say, hey, I want to become an LF project because LF will grow my project. Right? That's one business benefit, if you want to say that. But the other, from you all perspective, it just, you will have a lot more accurate data about it. That's the important. But many of the non-LF project, like a Node.js popular project, we are pretty confident our data quality is more than 90%. Yeah. So, yes. So you go and go to GitHub, create the project. I think what now we are changing the topic, but it's important to understand. See, just because you created an open source project, I'll be honest, it's not going to become an LF project, right? It needs to provide value, right? So, if as a maintainer you have created that project, and a lot of organization are leveraging it already, we will know because we like who is contributing. Those are the insights. We look at it and then say, oh yeah, your project is valuable to the ecosystem, let us come and support you. It needs to be valuable, right? Even though it's an open source project, it's a product, because someone, like, you don't really pay by your dollars, but you pay by your time, right? So, or by committing to it, you pay, right? If I start relying my business on an open source project, I kind of paid for it, right? I committed myself to it. So, yeah. Okay. Any other question? Yeah. Uh, Thank you. Again, repeat. My name is Manish Dixit. I run product and engineering at Linux Foundation. You guys can find me on LinkedIn and reach out to me. And if you guys have any question regarding anything open source, I'm here today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.